Chapter: Energy Intelligence. When the genetic code begins to learn. Underscore Author: Nguyen Song Leet. We will continue the line of thought from energy encoding, from traces to DNA, to the chapter titled Energy Intelligence, when the genetic code begins to learn. This chapter will further explain when the DNA code not only remembers but also learns. When energy, through life, self-regulates its own flow. And when that learning opens the foundation for consciousness, intelligence, and modern biotechnology. 1. When life knows how to remember to live. In the previous chapter, we saw that energy not only moves but also leaves memories in matter. That is the genetic code. But a code, if it just sits there, is like a book stored in a cupboard. It knows but does not live. Life truly begins when the code knows how to read itself. To read, to know how to copy, how to respond, and gradually how to learn. So, what is learning? It is when an energy system records change and then adjusts its behavior accordingly. At the molecular level, learning occurs when DNA reacts differently to the same agent. At the cellular level, learning occurs when enzyme reactions are enhanced or inhibited to adapt. At the human level, learning is when conscious energy knows how to revise its own operating code. Thus, learning is not solely a product of the brain. Learning is a natural property of energy seeking to optimize its flow. Underscore underscore. 2. DNA, a self-adapting memory. Imagine DNA not just as a record book, but as a dynamic memory, constantly being adjusted by the living energy within the body. When the environment changes, temperature, light, food, emotions, the genes are not immutable. They switch on and off like a light switch, responding to the incoming energy flow. This is what modern science calls epigenetics, the mechanism by which DNA remembers environmental experiences without changing the original code. For example, when the body is under stress, stress energy enters the cells, methylating a region of DNA. That gene is turned off. When the body is nourished, the energy is stable, and that gene turns on again. Thus, DNA not only contains the code, but is also learning how to control how the code is read. It's like a student learning when to speak and when to be silent. The energy has learned to regulate its own voice. Underscore underscore. 3. From cells to the nervous system. A learning energy network. Each cell is a small learning unit. But when billions of cells connect through electrical potentials, ions, and chemical signals, a large-scale learning network emerges. The nervous system. In the nervous system, energy not only travels but also changes its own path after each experience. Every time we feel, remember, or love, millions of synapses are rewriting the energy flow map, just as DNA once wrote the initial code. If DNA is biological memory, then the brain is dynamic memory, where energy writes and erases every moment of life. The evolution from DNA to the brain is a great leap. Energy shifts from mechanical memory to meaningful memory. Here, meaning is not an abstract concept, but the degree of efficiency in maintaining the flow of life energy. A behavior is meaningful when it helps the system survive longer, with less waste, or creates conditions for stronger energy transmission. Underscore underscore. 4. When energy becomes reflective. The birth of consciousness. There was a point in evolution when energy not only learned to adapt, but also began to observe its own learning process. That is when consciousness was born. In the brain, neural regions interact with each other, forming a high-level feedback loop. Sensation, memory, reflection on that sensation. We don't just feel pain, but we also know that we are in pain. We don't just think, but we also know that we are thinking. At that moment, energy, through bioelectrical currents, reflects itself like a mirror. And in that mirror, it first recognizes the existence of its own flow. Consciousness, therefore, is not a separate soul, but the highest convergence of energy transmission capable of self-reference. That is energy intelligence, a form of energy that knows how to question its own origin and purpose. Underscore underscore. 5. Learning, a new mechanism of energy transmission. At the human level, learning is no longer a reaction, but a conscious creation. When we learn a language, create tools, or write literature, we are reprogramming the energy in our brains to create new models of the world. If DNA learns through mutation and selection, then humans learn through hypothesis and imagination. Each idea is a conscious mutation in the flow of intellectual energy. Effective ideas, those that help us understand, do, or survive better, will be selected and propagated. That is cultural inheritance, the second version of the genetic code, but occurring in the energy of consciousness. And with the advent of AI, humanity is entering the third generation of the genetic code, where energy is written in electronic form, capable of learning, copying, and evolving outside the biological body. Understand.